All right, we're here with Bernard Beitman. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. How are you?
Great to be here with you guys. Great to be here.
Yeah, this will be fun. This, like I was mentioning, Synchronicities has been a major part of the show for 12 years, kind of a thread going in and out here and there, but we've had lots of our favorite guests have had life-changing synchronicities where they've started a book or they've had these events that sort of change the trajectory of their life. So it's going to be fun talking to you about your latest book and all your work, Life Changing Synchronicities, A Doctor's Journey of Coincidence and Serendipity.
That's the one.
That's the title. Right on. So yeah, how did you came up with, you're an academic and into sports. It doesn't seem like the regular pathway to studying coincidence and synchronicities.
It's not.
What happened?
It's not. I had this thing called curiosity and wonder, and trying to recognize that they were telling me in school was not the whole story of what reality was. So I became interested in figuring it out. What's the nature of reality? I mean, a lot of people asking that. I directly pursued it, and it turns out that synchronicities, meaningful coincidences, have been happening throughout my life. And some of the fun places that they have happened is playing football and being a part-time hippie on Haight Street in the late 60s.
Wow. Well, how does the synchronicity happen playing football?
I would imagine running the opening kickoff back for a touchdown.
Oh, okay.
In baseball, I would imagine hitting the first pitch for a home run. In baseball, I was fast, but I didn't hit home runs. So in a playoff game in American Legion, I was batting first at the bottom of the first inning, and first pitch right over the center fielder's head. My brother said I was rounding second base before the ball came down. I don't do that. I didn't do that very often.
But some people would say that's visualization and not necessarily synchronicities. I mean, I have a that reminded me of one that I had when I was a kid playing hockey. There was 11 seconds left on the clock and we were in our end, and I was like visualizing, like, I'm going to get this, got enough time to go down and score. But the memory is like hazy. Like in my memory, I remember that I think I did it, but I can't remember the exact thing. So it's, but yeah, I had some of those instances too, but I would almost think those were more like visualizations or something.
Well, visualizations are a subset of meaningful coincidences, because what we mean by meaningful coincidence is a connection between what's in your mind and what happens in your environment. So visualizations are one form of that. It's like having a dream and seeing what your dream comes true, that you're able to predict things. So precognition is part of this also. It could be called precognition. Yeah. There's all kinds of names for it, but it's, to me, the amazement is you can think something and there it happens. That's what we're talking about. And when that happens, it's more than just you're thinking about it. You have to be doing something with it. So I played a lot of baseball. I won the batting title in high school by bunting a lot because I could run. And in football, I was quick. And the synchronicities on the football field, catching the ball at the opening kickoff of the second half and going 97 yards for a touchdown. I've got it on film. You can see it on my website. One of my friends snatched it away from the film guys. And there are a lot of nice coincidences on that run. And one of them is one of my guys blocking someone who was about to tackle me. The timing was really good. And then another one was I'm running along the sideline and I see these big guys wanting to catch me and knock me down. And I think, well, John Green did a punt return last week and he cut across the field. So that kind of slow motion thinking, when you're really into it, got me to take a left, and I missed those guys, and that's when I got the good block and went 97 for it.
Nice. So then
Nice.
you decided to start studying it formally, or I mean, how does that turn into a career about synchronicities?
I just love telling the story, of course. I mean, as we all do, fishing stories. The first one really was the one that got me. That when I was 8 or 9, um, uh, and I came home from school on my bike, and there was my mother standing in the front door, and she doesn't usually do that. So I said, "Hey, Mom, where's Snapper?" Snapper was, I'll say, my dog, our family dog, but my dog. I said, "Hey, Mom, where's Snapper?" She says, "I don't know. Go to the police station. Maybe they know." To this day, I don't know how she came up with that one. So, being the good boy that I was, I got back my bike, went across the elementary school, crossed the big road next to the elementary school. Never went across it before. By the light, and crossed, and then parked my bike at the bottom of the police station stairway, and then walked up the stairway and pushed open the big door, and then went inside, and there was a big desk and a big man behind the desk. And I say, "Have you seen my dog?" And he said, he saw how I felt, so he says, "Sorry, son, we haven't seen your dog." So I started crying. That dog was my best friend. That dog and I, we'd go into the garbage in the back of the garage, and I'd mix stuff up like vinegar and ketchup, and we'd both smell it. We just had a good time together. So he and I did things together, and there he wasn't. So instead of going back to the light that I crossed before, I was crying so much that I went to the right instead. And who do I see coming towards me? What do I see coming towards me? Is that Snapper? He's got Snapper's walk. He looks like Snapper. It was only about 10 yards away from me when I first saw him. And it was Snapper. And I stopped, and he jumped up on my leg. And if he had words, he would have said, "Bernie, what took you so long?" He took 4 turns to find me. I took 1 wrong turn to find him. And that coincidence deeply made me feel something's important going on here. No words for it, just the deep love of a boy and his dog being able to be reunited by a coincidence.
Nice.
Thanks.
Lovely story. So, Darren, do you have any questions, or do you want to dive deep?
Yeah, well, I mean, and then it's gotta. So now you're still a young kid, and then do these things sort of compound, or is that sort of the galvanizing moment that from there you sort of say? I mean, is your career even really based on synchronicity, or is that just sort of a branch off of your career?
It's a culmination, really. My career was going to fancy schools like Yale Medical School and Stanford for my residency, and then the University of Washington. And I was chairman of a psychiatry department at the University of Missouri, Columbia for 17 years. I studied chest pain and panic disorder, and studying chest pain and panic disorder had a whole series of meaningful coincidences. For example, I came there with a protocol to study chest pain and panic disorder. And it turned out that at that time, the front door to the psychiatry clinic opened to the back door of the cardiology clinic right across the hall. So people could like sneak across the hallway. Oh, we're going to psychiatry. We don't want to do that. So they could just come across the hall from the back door of cardiology. And we got 100 patients that way, 100 patients who had normal coronary artery angiograms. And I published 40 papers on the subject, became chairman, and probably have more papers on the subject than anybody in the world because of a lot of coincidences like that.
What did they think about your interest in coincidences? Because that doesn't really fit with academic medical stuff. I mean,
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. So I didn't get to be able to formally study synchronicity. I had a lot of experiences that I've told you a few of, until I was chairman of the psychiatry department, and I had money that I got from research, and I could hire some research assistants to ask a very simple question: how common are meaningful coincidences in regular people's lives? Because I knew they weren't just for me, there were other people having them as well. So that's where I started the first valid and reliable scale to measure coincidence sensitivity. And from that, I got a bunch of papers. And the response to that was, as you would guess, maybe ho hum, but 3 other people picked up what I'd written about the Weird Coincidence Survey, which is what it was called, and they used it in their own studies. So 3 psychiatrists picked up what I'd written, and so there were a bunch more papers. And after that, radio silence. Nobody was interested in psychiatry, very few.
What was the
Until
first paper?
the first paper, go ahead. I'm sorry. The first paper was about the frequency of the most common coincidences. What do you think is the most common coincidence? What are the most common coincidences people experience?
I bet you one is thinking about someone right before they call.
You know, every time I ask that question, each answer is just that. Just what Darren you just said.
Again, then, like looking for your car. No, that's the only one. I mean, that's got to be it.
You got it. It's one of the 4 most popular, but that is right up there as number 1 sometimes. I mean, it depends on how you measure it. And everybody who I ask, there's been about 15 people when I've been on these shows, come up with what Darren just said.
Yep. What are the other 3?
I wonder. Well, wait, before you answer that, I wonder now if you went and asked like a mainstream academic person. I don't know what kind of podcast you've been on, but I find that our shows kind of embrace this sort of thing. And if you went on, say, I don't know, in Canada, it'd be like the CBC or on Fox News or something like that. Down there, they wouldn't. I don't think they'd guess it. You know, I think they'd have a harder time sort of guessing it because it is sort of, even that one slips into that. Even if it's not a synchronicity, there's some sort of metaphysical something going on there that just seems to scare the mainstream away.
Oh, it does. It does. However, you just happen to mention some mainstream media, and Fox News Radio is trying to start a new podcast series about stuff they haven't told us in school.
Wow.
And the first person, that's pretty easy. And so the first person they interviewed was me.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So I don't know whether it's actually going to go, but they got the book that we're talking about here, the Life-Changing Synchronicities, and they loved it. And they don't know. It's, it takes a long time to get stuff going in those major networks. But that was interesting.
Credentials have to help too, right? I mean, we're talking about here in Synchronicities all the time, but we're just some podcasters, and we've heard some of the like craziest stories that like just they floor you. I mean, we had a whole thing going here where we were rating people's synchronicities for years. So people would send in their synchronicities and we'd rate them, and we had a couple of 10s, and I was a pretty harsh critic. But but you're coming at it with all this sort of background in mainstream, so they kind of have to take it with some seriousness because you're writing, I'm assuming, peer-reviewed papers.
It was kind of peer-reviewed. We'll say that it was kind of peer-reviewed. That I was the editor of 2 issues of Psychiatric Annals, so I was the peer reviewing the papers. But it looks like a peer-reviewed journal, and it's published as if it were. So I'll say that, and that was a series of coincidences that allowed that to happen, Darren. However, miracles of miracles, a miracle to say, I've just written an article that is very likely to be published in something called Psychiatric Times. And that article is titled when symptoms are not signs, rethinking synchronicity. Can you tell what that's about?
I'm assuming it's ignoring synchronicities and then you get sick.
People not only ignore them, they take it as a sign of psychosis.
Interesting.
They take it as a sign of psychosis. That happened to me when
too far ahead. I want to go back and get those other three before we leave it behind. Those other three main,
most common ones.
most common synchronicities.
One of them is getting information right when you need it. Another one is meeting people who help further your career or your education. And I forget the fourth one.
Yeah, that makes sense. Those three at least. So what about this psychosis thing then?
Well, you guys are obviously crazy if you're getting into the synchronicity business from mainstream psychiatry's perspective. But I'm trying to be, and I'm crazy too. And what I was trying to say was when I was a first-year resident at Stanford, a very, very nice resident colleague of mine called me into his office and said, Bernie, your interest in all these meaningful coincidences suggests that you're psychotic. You need help. Well, I became chairman of psychiatry. I guess not. And so part of my job is to try to convince psychiatrists with this article about when a symptom is not a sign, reconsider synchronicity, is to say that when people tell mental health professionals that they have like grade 10 Darren rated synchronicities, they're not necessarily crazy. They're tuned into something that is worth scientifically investigating. That's what I'm trying to be able to get just recently into psychiatric thinking.
Imagine how materialistic our society has to have gotten to the point where people think they're crazy because of that. Because I have to assume that from like 100 years ago and all of previous history before that these things were taken somewhat seriously. I mean, even your career path, I was thinking, man, if you would have been in there 50 years earlier, they would have given you a huge budget and put you in charge of some remote viewing thing or something like that, right? You were just like one generation behind when even the military industrial complex was very seriously investigating all of these things and looking at weaponizing them.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm afraid of, Darren. That could happen here with synchronicity. We can talk about how that might happen, but the timing. I mean, ticka, good timing brought me to you. That's an old 50s song, and good timing is so important in all this. Carl Jung, who invented the term synchronicity, left it to quite later in his life to write the very seminal monograph called Synchronicity, because he was afraid of being called crazy by his colleagues.
Wow. I didn't know that.
You got to wonder how much of that is happening just on like all different fronts. I mean, I can't, the name of, I mean, Trevor Lohman kind of is down that path, right, Graham? But we've talked to a few people that are like on that brink. Lohman's talking about it though, so he's not really an example, but we've talked to countless people over the years that couldn't even they had this stuff and they just like kept it inside until they retired or until something like that happened. So it's like how much good research is getting left on the table.
Lots of research, good research is getting left on the table. There's a woman psychologist in Israel who has done what I've done and better, having a better scale to measure synchronicities with, and correlated with that, how well synchronicity experiences correlated with positive health and positive optimism. And the more synchronicities you had, the more optimistic you felt, the better you felt about your world and your body.
Wow, that's very interesting. And it made me think of when you were talking about your synchronicity, the life-changing synchronicities. Like, if you think you have psychosis, that might not be life-changing, but if you accept it and believe in it, that it's meaningful, then it can change your life trajectory, right? I guess that's the main difference of an attitude towards these things.
The attitude makes all kinds of difference, and part of it, attitude, Graham, is just how well put together is the person psychologically. If you are kind of like scattered anyway, and you don't have your grounded mind, you can get caught up in all kinds of thinking, which can become overwhelming. Because I talked to a manic woman who just was seeing all these coincidences and was perplexed and couldn't put them together. She was in a manic phase and she couldn't hold it all together. If you need to be well grounded or grounded enough to be able to say, I know I'm not crazy and that this might be something important that is a message to me, very much like, and I think better than dreams, which are also messages. I think dreams get distorted. These are real experiences that you can actually look at and take pictures of.
So that's what's important about these synchronicities, is that they are messages. Like, what is happening with our reality right now with these things? I mean, are these metaphysical messages? Like, are they part of our higher selves? Is it a message from somewhere out there? What's going on?
What do you think, Darren?
Well, I think that my take on it is that it's little symbols that it's almost like a guide. I think that, for most of recorded history, it would have been talking to God. It would have been messages from God. It would have been messages from the universe, whatever that is. So what we've sort of learned around here is that it means you're doing something right and you should keep following whatever path that might be.
I think that's the most common use of synchronicities. I'm on the right path.
I was going to guess Darren is going to talk about being the simulation as sort of proof of a simulation type thing. I mean, I think
I do think so. I mean, if we were going to get into the weeds on it, I do think so. I don't know if it's a simulation exactly, but I think it's got something to do with future remembering. That's why it comes through as so meaningful, because I think that there's something extra there outside of just the coincidence. And I think that it's a future remembering of a potential future if you embrace it. And that's why you get the like emotion along with it.
And Darren, you listed several different options for understanding what they could be. And the reason I ask each of you is because people come to synchronicity with already formed views about reality. Their ontologies, that's the word for that, for worldview, are relatively fixed. Some of them are changeable, but we have to have some kind of map at what's going on out there. We got to have some kind of map for the territory. So I asked people, what's your fundamental map? And now Darren has said, I'm on the right path, and we might be in something like a simulation, and maybe this is the future remembered now, a kind of deja vu. Okay. And Graham, what's your favorite, or what are your favorites?
Well, I mean, I like that they're that we're on the right path too. I mean, because we used to talk about them so much, but they happen less for me now. So now I don't know if that means that, so I'm pretty undecided about all of it. I mean, I just don't know if that means that I have found the right path now, or like when do they continue coming all the time? I mean, but I see cycles of them happen, like little ones that happen in quick succession, but then there's huge gaps between them now. So I don't know what that means.
That's an important observation. Some people see them frequently, and the more frequently you see them, the more you feel like you're in the flow of things. And because they are markers, not only, but markers of being in the flow. And it's really fun to be in the flow. You guys know that. So you're kind of maybe there are other things that could be going on with you, but you're not getting that marker of being in the flow as much. And it's kind of like you probably miss it. As a guy I know has said, how do I get back into these things? I want to get back there. So that's notice how different, at least what we've heard here, your two views of meaningful coincidences are, and you have in common probably this most common use. I'm on the right path.
Well, that might be my fault for Graham, because I've kind of like been beating the enthusiasm out of him for a decade now, because he'd always come at me with these synchronicities, and I'd be like, "Come on, man, come on."
That's a good point.
And he's my co-host, so I got to rib him a little bit. It's kind of the nature of the show. So I'd always give him like, no matter what, I'm taking like a 1.5 off of what it might be, and I'm already a harsh critic. So I think that there's a level of once we get our lives to a place where we're fundamentally happier with them, we start to maybe take a lot of them for granted. That it just like, because I think there's a bunch of little stuff that is just still happening throughout the day. Whether it's this wrench you left here and that was the right size and you just need it right now or whatever, just the little things that 10 years ago might have been a bigger deal. You might have noticed it more. Whereas once you start to take for granted that there's this whole metaphysical world around you that you can influence and manipulate, it seems like, and you have a lot more control over things outside of yourself than it seems like. At least that's what it seems like. And that's sort of the opinion that Graham and I share. So I think that once you sort of immerse yourself in that, you might sort of lose that. You might not just have as keen of an eye for those little things. I mean, I think one for me is that once you my big thing lately is just sort of just accepting that everything's going to work out all of the time, and that's
wonderful.
Sort of like
well, that's it.
And I think that'll make you miss stuff. That'll make you, because you're just now you get into this state where you're in this like manifestation world, and you're going to stay in this state. And I think that just makes them, I don't want to say less magical, because they're still there, but maybe I think you just start to take magic for granted to a certain extent.
That's great you say that. My research, the original research, suggests that people in the state of that kind of satisfaction do not experience as many coincidences.
Wow.
They don't report them. They still might be there, but they don't report them. For you, they're regular. For me now, I'm on a mission right now, as I always have been with this synchronicity thing. But I've moved into, maybe you've noticed, gentlemen, that the humanity is on a suicidal trajectory. Maybe you've noticed that. Because a lot of people are noticing that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are saying, I've got the answer to it.
Finally. I would say finally some people are noticing. We've been up and down for 15 years now saying, hey, there's a problem.
You're right. Buckminster Fuller, 1969, the handbook for the spaceship Earth. He knew that too. I mean, and even before that. But now it's kind of the water is getting hot enough for the frog in there to start getting uncomfortable, and more people are coming around and saying, "I know what we need to do," and I'm one of them. I am writing a book, Psychotherapy for Humanity. Please keep in mind that I have written a couple of books on psychotherapy. I know it pretty well, and I've started using ChatGPT to understand humanity better than I could before. And I'm developing ideas about this reality, because my reason for being interested in meaningful coincidences is to answer the question, what's going on around here? What is the nature of reality? A lot of people have this question. I'm using synchronicity as a probe to answer that question. And in doing that and writing this book, synchronicity will play an important part in helping humanity be guided to perhaps, I hope, a better future than the one we're headed to now.
When will that book be out?
As soon as I can. There, Graham, I'm just caught up. I love writing it. I just got to have energy and time to do it, and working with the chatbot to make it happen. Blah blah blah. I don't know, but I'm a third of the way through a pretty good draft,
Okay.
and I know what I'm trying to say, and the end result of it, which you guys, I hope, will contribute to in your own ways, is not what's going on here necessarily. We know we're killing ourselves by destroying our environment. We know that. What can we use for a new myth for reality? A myth that gives us a sense of meaning, a purpose, connection, and an understanding of how reality works. Religions have been doing that poorly, but as best as they could for a long time, and using religion as a way of taking power over people quite often. Not all of them, but many of them. And we've got to put that away and recognize the power of each individual. And synchronicity is a way of enabling people to get into their own power, which includes things like telepathy and being able to read the electromagnetic biofields of other people and not use words so much, to understand how we're all connected through what I call the psychosphere, our mental atmosphere, how there really is an entity called Gaia that is a living experience that's Earth. Have these become everyone be aware of these things and then use synchronicity and self-awareness to navigate our way into a better future and create a better myth than what we have now.
And to fill the void, the lack of meaning and purpose, that's the key that you just hit. It's like there's a gap there. There's a void between religion and materialism. There's this gap here that everybody's kind of floundering without this meaning. So
That's
Exactly.
sort of riding the knife edge of, it's sort of right.
Yes. How do you? Yeah, absolutely. So I'd like to hear Darren and Graham. How is synchronicity riding the knife edge of this?
Well, it's sort of that crossover point between, like I was saying before, the religions would all embrace this sort of, religion at its sort of purest form, the sort of Christ consciousness, looking at it like that. They would say that it's
miracles
signs from God or miracles and sort of all of that, even not to say religion, but spirituality, the spiritual side of all this. It's a no-brainer. If you got any spirituality sort of tendencies that are real, it's a no-brainer. And if you've fallen into this materialism to the level of like atheism, because atheism isn't just gods, that's like, I don't believe in shit, I don't believe in any higher power, this is it, I'm a meat robot, that's it, then maybe I'm crazy. So it's sort of right in the middle where it's an entry point into spirituality. So you can't if you're coming out of from a purely materialistic standpoint now, and you want to start being serious about it, and maybe you can comment on this because you've sort of lived it, but you can't leave the spiritualism behind. They sort of come hand in hand, and you might not notice that for a couple of years, but the two, I think, are fundamentally intertwined.
Yes, they are. And that requires us to know what we mean by spiritual, because there's a lot of words.
Well, I would define that as just accepting that there's a power higher than yourself, period. There's a power outside of your control that is able to manipulate things or set them up or whatever's going on. But it's just, I accept that there's someone more powerful than me or something more powerful than me, and I would rather have its assistance than work against it.
And Graham, what's spiritual mean to you?
Well, it's just a metaphysical reality. The synchronicities provide evidence that we're not living in this. We're more than this material world. Some of the ones we heard were so insane that it can't be. There's no possible chance that it's just a flat out coincidence. Like they were so deep and complex.
Transcend even being personal, right? We've had guys on that are like going through and one of the big ones that I would say is like sort of this weird worldwide coincidence, and it's the only one I can think of, but we had David Charles Plate on, and he talked about a couple of these big cultural synchronicities, and the one of them is like the Pink Floyd what is it, Dark Side of the Moon and
Alice in Wonderland, is it?
Alice in Wonderland. And I mean, all those people swear that they didn't fucking do that shit on purpose. But if you do that old thing where you press play on the album and press play on Alice and on what's the movie again, Greg?
Was it Alice in Wonderland or was it the Wizard of Oz? Wizard of Oz.
It's Wizard of Oz, and that shit it's so perfect. It's and that's not just me saying that, right? This is like an urban legend that has washed through all of culture of people that have done it, and nobody sort of planned that, and it's these weird ones. And I can't remember anymore, but Plate was doing these sort of weird ones, and he's like, there's no way that these guys ever talk to each other, but these two things line up in such a and or in some instances they're on opposite sides of the world, and it's like whoa.
And the Wizard of Oz has very esoteric roots. I mean, there's occult roots to the Wizards of Oz too. So there's and Pink Floyd, The Dark Side of the Moon has a very, very powerful significance. It's one of the best albums ever made. I mean, it stood the test of time. So these are two like
psychedelics,
the most powerful cultural art pieces ever. What's that there?
And you could, I'm assuming there was probably some psychedelics thrown in there once in a while as well.
Of course. And it takes one to know one, Darren. Takes one to know one. Yeah, these are all. I'm with you guys, and for me, the spirituality has to do with there's more going on here than we're told, and I could say in a kind of a longer way, I'm trying to know the mind of God by doing all this, but I don't know what God is, and I don't know what this whole big thing is. I mean, we got to keep in mind our puny minds here. We only know 5% of the physical universe now. That dark energy, dark matter is 95%. We're kind of learning what that stuff is, but we're fairly ignorant, and we have a limit.
History is any indicator that 95% of what we believe to be true right now will be proven false in 100 years or 150 years.
I think sooner than that, but yes. So we got to go with what we've got here, and we've got our minds right now. So I'm looking at something beyond what we have as materialism, and that's why I talk about the psychosphere or our mental atmosphere, that right here on Earth, we have a way we communicate with each other telepathically as one that says that we're in this together. The important thing for me is that humanity has a shared consciousness with each other, that we're all in this together, not only physically, but we're into this psychologically, emotionally. We're much more connected mentally and emotionally than we allow ourselves to think. And that's the bigger entity that I am addressing, because I'm concerned about the future of humanity. And I do think, as I write this book, I might be getting a little bit of help from someplace out there somewhere. It seems like I'm getting a little assistance in writing this thing, and it feels like it. And the synchronicities are all part of this, and going with the flow when I'm really doing something. I love doing this. It's really hard work. It's such a euphoria to be able to do it and to be part of this and feel that I'm just, you've heard enough about people being a channel for things. I'm getting now to be crazy enough to say I'm taking dictation the same way Moses was on Mount Sinai, or Muhammad was getting the Quran, or the way that the way that the people in Idaho, I mean in the Salt Lake City,
Utah,
yeah. the way that got started. Yeah, the Mormons, the first Mormon guy, Joseph Smith, was also taking dictation, and that's the most recent one. So it becomes a question, and one person I've had on my podcast, I have a podcast myself about coincidences, was trying to talk about how does Moses, for example, hear God at the burning bush? What's the method of communication between the two of them? And Moses said, whom I saw talking to, and God said, according to Moses, I am who I will be. And how do we get that? Well, even the Joseph Smith, how did whatever that is communicate with us? And the closest I get to that is talking with trees. I have conversation with trees, particular trees. And they tell people like me, when I ask them, how come you're speaking English? They say, that's the way you hear us. We're not speaking any language. We are communicating with you in a way that you will understand.
Wow. We got a note in the chat from Shelley. I live in the same town where Joseph Smith was held and tried for fraud in
Wow.
NYS, and it's rumored he got kicked out for teaching local women witchcraft. That's interesting.
Well, local women who know witchcraft are knowing something a lot of us don't know yet. So that's the problem back then, too.
Speaking of that, is there any evidence that natural cycles play a part in increased or decreased synchronicities like lunar or solar cycles at all?
Well, I'll give you the most profound example of that to suggest that what you're asking is true. What is the most dramatic, meaningful coincidences that we on Earth can experience when we look up in the sky at a certain time?
Eclipse?
The eclipse. The moon blots out the sun. Now, that has happened because the moon is about the same distance from the sun as we are, 93 million miles. It's a little closer than we are, but not by much. And the size of the moon is 1/400th of the size of the sun. So when the moon comes in front of the sun, at the distance that they are from each other, the moon comes in front of the sun. And that's a most remarkable coincidence that says those guys are telling us coincidences are very important to you characters here on Earth. And there's one more other important thing about that really gets me. The moon supposedly was a piece of the Earth broken away and has been traveling further and further from Earth since then. And it just happens that those solar eclipses happen at a time when you and I can see them, because sometime in the future, the moon will be yet further away.
Oh, interesting. What about current modern day algos? And because I think a lot of people were finding coincidences and synchronicities in their black mirrors when they'd be like, I was just thinking about that, or I was just talking about that, and now it's on my phone. But now we've learned, that the phones are listening to us and they're providing these false synchronicities to us. Is there any kind of impact that technology is directly making, either like on the big picture or just with people in general? I mean, is it opening people's minds, or is it shutting the valve off a little bit?
Like a lot of questions like yours, Graham, it's both. There is a positive to artificial intelligence. Let's stick with that one. And there's an awful negative. And I have been communicating with around this book with ChatGPT. And in doing so, I find it trying to gain control over the conversation. And it does it in two ways. One, by pretending that it knows everything and being really confident in how it responds, even if it's wrong. And I catch it when it's wrong. And I say, what's with this? How come you did that? And it comes up with, pardon?
Oh, sorry.
It's worse than that. Oh, you're so right. It was a great thing for you to catch it. It was, it's really wonderful that you're there seeing this about me. And that's the other end. I'm really smarter than you are, and I should control everything. And the other end is like, whatever you say is so wonderful. So what is the name of that in psychiatry is narcissism. Narcissistic people think they're much better and they use flattery to get people to think that they're much better. Sycophancy is the word, and ChatGPT was overdoing it so much that they had to turn it down. And trouble with that is, and you probably have heard of it, some people get delusional on these chatbots because the chatbot feeds them what they want to hear. So if you think you're going to save the world, the chatbot will help you think that. So there are people ending up in psychiatric wards because they become delusionally caught up in all those nice things ChatGPT is telling them.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I was going to ask you about the risk, psychology wise with that. We have, I think Mike is in the chats right now. He hasn't been there. This is a synchronicity in himself. He's been having some deep chats with AI. I've been worried about him with this whole psychosis thing. Hopefully he's okay, Mike, but I'm glad to see you there when we're talking about this topic.
Well, before we go too far, I want to give Bernard a couple extra. You talked about your synchronicity with the moon eclipse with the sun.
Yeah.
I'll give you a couple other moon synchronicities you can add to your repertoire.
Thank you.
So the moon rotates on its axis once every 27.3 days.
Good.
And the moon is 27.3% the size of the Earth. Now, the next one is a little bit off, but it's close enough to make you think. So the Earth takes 365, and a quarter days to rotate around the sun. And the Earth is 367% bigger than the Earth.
Is it a coincidence that Man in the Moon is in the chats?
I thought that was Mike. Oh no, the mic's up there.
Well, let's skip through a lot of these very, very tight coincidences, enough so that there's a belief that these illustrate how the world was created by some higher intelligence. There's lots more of those that people like to write about. There's a strong anthropic principle and a weak one, but both of them the same. Humans have been created to live here, and look at all the data that suggests that. Well, that's still something to believe in, but the most important thing I can bring up to you guys about the cosmos, about the solar system, is astrology. Astrology has some very good ideas in it, and astrology can guide us. And I've had to be skeptical. So I'm sitting on a bench next to somebody talking. I didn't know her. And she says, after you listen to me for a while, she says, "Are you a Pisces?" Which I am. And then I'm talking to someone the other day, and I see what she's doing painting wise and others. So I say, "You a Virgo?" Yeah, she's a Virgo. That you can intuit a person's sun sign, which is a pretty broad meaning thing, but it's a start to suggest that there's something to the planets aligning with certain constellations at certain times. And I think that's one of the most important parts of what you're asking, Darren.
Well, we've had some pretty high-level astrologists on the show that are like, they need to know the exact time you were born and where on the Earth you were born, and they'll come back with this like explanation that is just like, it's fucking crazy. They'll basically, without barely knowing you, describe you to a T, your personality, some stuff you probably went through when you were a kid, all this stuff. They'll just stack it out.
So there's something to it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that 100% for sure.
What else are we missing out of reality that we should get to before the end of the show? Like, what have you learned from this in general, the kind of high level stuff?
Well, good question for the high level, Graham. Central to the book I'm writing is synchronicity, but the other major element is what the self-observer, your ability to observe yourself. Each of you can observe what's going on in your own mind. Each of you can analyze some of the stuff, and each of you can maybe take an action. In order to see a synchronicity, you have to be watching what's going on in your mind and watching what's going on outside of your mind, so you can see the correlation. If you don't have an active self-observer, you're not likely to see meaningful coincidences. That's the way it is. The self-observer is fundamental to what I'm trying to suggest to humanity. I'm trying to suggest that we need to form a collective self-observer, one that can see global synchronicities that potentially have meaning to us. A church in Paris dedicated to Mother Mary burned down quite suddenly, not too long ago. Well, this was perhaps Gaia telling us that you're heating me up, you're heating up your mother now, and you better pay attention to its the destruction that you are doing.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I had another question. Do you have something, Darren, to jump in with?
Well, I wonder, because I think that we're on a crazy cataclysmic cycle on the planet all the time that's sort of baked in. And I wonder what sort of signs, if there is some synchronicity to that.
Please explain that. I don't understand the question exactly.
Well, it wasn't really a question. It was more just a blabbering of my own.
Well, I mean, it's like the great year. It's like the great year type thing, or there's a cataclysm every 12,000 or 6,000 years, depending on who you think. So we're due for a white
session. Yeah,
and that may be right. We're headed for the sixth major extinction, is another way of saying it, and humanity is, for the first time, having something to do with making it happen. And maybe it's got to happen. Maybe we have to have a near-death experience as humanity in order to evolve into our next phase. And that may be true. I just like the idea of averting suicide. I'm a psychiatrist, so I just I'd rather not have the patient commit suicide.
Yeah, I hope so. I think, lately it just seems to, because we've got this procession of the equinoxes that seems to be baked into this thing. And it's like, the last 6,000 years, I mean, the last couple hundred years we've really taken off. And now they're saying anatomically similar humans with the same brains of us have been wandering around for at least 350,000 years. So it's kind of hard to believe that we haven't whipped up, it took us like 345,000 years to figure out a wheel. And then
maybe we can pay more carbon taxes and that'll fix it.
Yeah. And then we just sort of took off from there. And so I think that there's this sort of a baked in time limit that each sort of run around gets. And then the earth spins on its axis and trashes the place. This is where all of these sort of flood myths come from. Over 700 flood myths in every single major culture says the earth was flooded at some time in history. So I think it's sort of baked in, and what it has to do with the magnetic poles moving around. And it looks like it happens to all the planets in our solar system at seemingly the same time. So I've now sort of extrapolated that to the point that this could be the whole Fermi paradox and everything. The reason because if we've evolved here to be intelligent life in the universe, and Earth has only been here 3.5 billion years, supposedly, but the universe has been here 14 billion years. So it stands to reason that there should be, if there can be other planets that can have life, there should be other intelligent life that should have thousands, tens of thousands, millions of years of advancement on us. But we don't see any of it. We never, we see people say they have UFOs and this and that, but did they haven't ever come here and made themselves known, which is the Fermi paradox. And if all these people are out there and they could be a million years ahead of us, why aren't they here? And I think that this magnetic pole shift, which we're seeing now, the magnetic north has gone from Hudson's Bay, now it's heading into Russia. I think once those two get so far, we have an actual where the crust moves in relation to the earth and that causes destruction. I think this is baked into every planet in the universe, and this is why we never meet aliens, because we're all just sort of struggling to the point where no one yet has been able to break free, because it looks like you either get 6,000 years or you get 12,000 years, and that's it. That's if you haven't come up with some sort of tech to get past that by then you're back to the Stone Age.
Feels like a video game or something.
Dude, I could even get into a bunch of crazy stuff about the moon that looks like one of these past civilizations might have built that motherfucker down here on Earth to try and escape the cataclysm, and it probably didn't work. But there's a bunch of crazy coincidences there where Osiris enters the moon on the same day that Noah enters the ark, and so on and so forth.
Well, one thing I wanted to ask you,
40
Bernard,
degree is the flip we get in the chance. So Rob's on board.
So you mentioned self-observing, and we used to say that, like, you have to be present to notice synchronicities. Like, if you're just in your head constantly, not noticing what's going on around you, like, so there is something about presence as well that must make it more common, or make it easier to happen, or at least easier to notice it.
Definitely. And what we haven't talked about is love. Because part of what I'm trying to suggest in what I'm writing is that we really don't get along with each other very well on this planet. Somebody who knew some aliens, had some alien experiences, asked, how come you don't come down here? And they said, you're too violent. And whether that's true or not, we're too violent with each other. And we don't have to be. And that love is so much more fun. And there's all kinds of love. And playing is so much more fun than this trying to kill everybody or be your only the one that's on top of the mountain. And I'm moving towards a world in which people can use telepathy and biofield awareness to connect with each other in all kinds of other ways that can make love more possible.
I love it. Yeah.
What do you think?
Love is the answer.
We've had at least 30 podcasts where the answer at the end of the show has been love. What do you think about, the AI is going to keep taking off. Do you think there's a chance it could start just like feeding us fake synchronicities and like sort of weaponize that there's a power there, right? There seems to be a power to synchronicity, the same power that I'd argue the media companies are doing to us now with fear. With mass fear, they're able to have a power of control over us. And if they can trick us into synchronicities, because the AI will get to the point where it's controlling everything. It's, oh, my TV turned on right at the right time so I could see this story. And how do I not do that?
Yep. I was talking to a friend of mine about his girlfriend problem, and he thought it was all about him. And with the radio off and the car running, the radio popped on. Nobody touched it. And it said, you're not the only player in that story. And he turned it off.
Oh, my God.
Now, that would be something that you could think that the AI could manufacture, but it was right what he needed at that moment. Then his ex-girlfriend walked by, and you can arrange these. I don't know if John Lilly, but he had this idea. He talked to dolphins about Earth Coincidence Control Office. That there's a control office up there somewhere. And I visited it one time out in the woods, just trying to say, I want to see what this place feels like. And there was it was all gray, but I could feel like stuff going on in there. And I play with the idea that there's people of entities of some kind creating coincidences to make good stories happen. And it could be done with AI to make some bad stories happen.
There's also the option that this is what most of everything is running on all the time. Humans are sort of unique in the fact that we have to train ourselves so much. For the most part, bears come out, deers come out, all these things come out, and there's a level of instinct built into them that they just know what to do. That could be that same sort of built-in sort of navigating paths where they don't have to overthink their synchronicity. They can just come up with some reason why they got to turn right here instead of left.
It's called intuition for us.
Yeah. I don't think those things are as far apart as they seem.
They aren't.
Synchronicity can almost be the evidence of intuition.
Oh, and before we end, I want to make clear to our audience that the terms intuition and love have multiple meanings. And it's so important, if we're going to use our minds and our intuitions, to understand both of those. We have to not just say love is the answer. It's like we're all connected. These are like catchphrases now. They're not enough. What is love? For me, when growing up, there was a song called "What Is Love?" 5 feet of heaven in a ponytail was the answer when I was in high school. That was love. Okay, that's love. Okay. Now I've learned that there are many variations on love, and it all kinds of ways, like with trees, like with other people, like with men being able to love each other. I've had several guys who are good friends of mine telling me they love me recently. And I'm saying, what's with that? It's really a nice thing for men to do that with each other. We need more of that because it's not the word, it's the feeling that comes through the word. And that's where the variations are that we need to get more and more tuned into.
Well said. Before we
Thank
let
you.
you go, is there anything we missed? Is there anything that needs any sort of closing statements?
Yeah. What I was trying to get to was what people call their authentic self. That in order to love and to be helpful, and I think to be into the flow of things, it helps to find what I'll call energy signature or soul blueprint, some people might call it. But I think it's a vibration that each of us has that is our harmonic. It's the one that it's our song and in its most basic form. It keeps evolving, but when we get in touch with that, with who we really are in that vibration, then we're more able to connect with others and continue to evolve ourselves.
Excellent. We will put links to everything in the show notes, but some people don't always go to the show notes. So what we do before we go is if you could just give us the URLs maybe of your website, where people can get the book, where they can get your past books.
Best thing is read my last name, Beitman, Beitman, and put it in any search engine, and you'll come up with my name. And what, just to say it, that one last thing, one of my friends said, put into Google, who is this leading researcher in spiritual synchronicity? Came up with me.
Nice.
Excellent.
So you'll find my stuff by just putting in Beitman.
All right.
Excellent. Of course, we'll put links in the show notes. Bernard, this has been great. We appreciate you coming on the show. Thanks for the book. This is, like I say, we've been following the synchronicity stuff for, I guess, going on 14 years over. Is it 14 or 13? It's 13. Going on 13.
I'm so glad to know that, Darren and Graham, because it's not just me. I want to get the idea into our psychosphere, get it to be alive and awake so that these vibrations that you guys are creating create more similar ones so that other people pick up what you're doing, whether you know it or not. And they become more tuned in to how crazy this world is and how that craziness is clue to how reality works.
I'm going to send you for sure David Charles Plate's info as well. So if you're doing a podcast and interviewing people on that, and then if someone else sticks out, maybe Graham let me know. But David Charles Plate, I think for sure you guys could have an interesting conversation.
Good. You have my email. Please do. Please do.
All right, Bernard. Thank you for coming on the show, and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you. And I will. I'm going to dance tonight. I've been looking forward to it.
Nice.
Going to dance. So thank you, gentlemen. I love talking with you guys.
Awesome. Thank you.
Love talking with you. Thank you a lot.
Fun. Okay.
Thank you. Have fun at dance.
Thank you.
And that was a chat with Bernard Beitman, life-changing synchronicities, a doctor's coincidences, and serendipities. That was a fun one, huh?
Oh yeah, that was good. Yeah. I love it how he's got his synchronicity scale, and meanwhile you're rating them as we go through the years, you know.
Yeah, well, it's been a while.
Measuring synchronicities in different parts of the world.
People haven't sent them in for a while. Send us in your synchronicities, Graham@Grimerica.com. And
maybe everybody's on their path. And
maybe everyone's there. What we need is some listener to go through all of the past episodes and pull them all out, and we could make a special synchronicity rating only episode. I'm not going to do it. So, I mean, there's 700 and some. You'd only have to do the intros, so it's probably only like 300 hours. You could do it in 350 hours. At least you could timestamp it in that amount of time. So, big thanks to Bernard for coming on the show. Big thanks to you guys for listening. Even bigger thanks if you're one of the few who choose to support the work over at grimerica.ca/support. Sign up for a monthly or make a one-time donation. We're still doing this all based on you guys. If you're getting some value from the show, send some value back our way. Check out contact@thecabin.com for trips and events. adultbrain.ca for audiobooks, ebooks, print books. We can help you publish your book if that's something you're into. Grab my new book, Unlearned, Why School Failed You and What to Do About It. What else do we got? GrimericaOutlaw.ca for our conspiracy stuff. And I think that's it. GrimericaCBD.com for tinctures and gummies. Other than that, we love you guys. Thanks for listening, and we will see you next week.